is now crumbling right before our eyes. I sure hope they're paying attention, because Vladimir Putin has just issued what can only be described as a chilling warning involving nuclear weapons, global world order, and NATO's continued provocation. Oh, and that NATO lie that Russia launched an unprovoked war against Ukraine. Yeah, that lie is now crumbling right before our eyes. We've got a few big stories that are unfolding this weekend that I want to bring to you. So while Russia had nuclear submarines off the Florida coast this week, and Putin was laying out a nuclear policy with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the White House was busy doing important work for Pride Month, inviting men in dresses to stage fake press conferences in the White House press briefing room.
JVN.
Oh, yes.
Is it true that is all your natural hair?
Yes, I can confirm that this is not a wig.
Follow-up question, do you use your own products?
So now you know why the world doesn't take us seriously anymore. But over to someone who people are taking seriously, and that's Vladimir Putin right now. So Asia rolled out the red carpet for Putin this week during his Asia tour, which included stops in North Korea, Vietnam. Putin dropped a bombshell, both metaphorically and potentially literally. He called out NATO, citing recent escalations and threats. He's signaling a potential change to Russia's nuclear deterrence policy. And he said defeat in Ukraine would mean the end of Russia. A defeat in Ukraine would mean the end of Russia. So that's not going to happen despite what NATO thinks.
I think Zelensky and his friends will obviously know when there are Russian tanks in Kiev. I'm afraid that's what it's probably going to take. And I think Mr. Putin has figured that out. And I sense that something really big is coming.
This is a major change to their nuclear policy. So now Russia will not just use nukes in response to nukes if they're attacked, but also if there's a threat to the existence of Russia itself. So what's exceedingly chilling about that is that Putin is combining rhetoric with a very tangible show of military support. He's not just blathering on and making statements that he's not backing up. No, he's putting in place a Russian nuclear triad, which is a strategic defense mechanism that consists of intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and bombers. This is not just a hollow threat, guys. The nuclear triad, by the way, is crucial for maintaining a balance of power in the world, and it's something only a few nations, including the United States, actually possess. So take a look at this map. This is really interesting. This shows what countries have nuclear triad capabilities right now. And when you look at this, what does this mean in practical terms? Well, it shows Russia's readiness to elevate its strategic deterrence to any perceived existential threats. And as Putin sternly noted when he was in Vietnam, this involves not just theoretical capabilities, but actual deployment of advanced systems across the world. This is why Putin's comments this week are so worrying, particularly for NATO. He told the press that Russia's nuclear forces are constantly in a state of combat readiness, bolstered by recent agreements with nations like North Korea. Now let's discuss NATO as a piece of this. So Putin's rhetoric isn't happening in a vacuum. There are specific provocations by NATO that will lead us to war. Nigel Farage this week let the cat out of the bag. The West brought war to Ukraine. It's NATO's fault that Putin invaded Ukraine. And he said this back in 2014 on the floor of Parliament.
Just to make that worse, of course, some NATO members said they too would like the Ukraine to join NATO. We directly encouraged the uprising in the Ukraine that led to the toppling of the President Yanukovych, and that led, of course, in turn to Vladimir Putin reacting. And the moral of the story is if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised when he reacts.
So that was 2014 after the coup in Ukraine, and he's warning us again that Putin doesn't bluff. Keep poking the bear, and we are going to be facing World War III.
I stood up in the European Parliament in 2014 and I said, and I quote, there will be a war in Ukraine. Why did I say that? It was obvious to me that the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man a reason to his Russian people to say they're coming for us again and to go to war.
And during his talks, Putin pointed to NATO's activities as threats not only in Europe, but now even in the Asia-Pacific region. He said this while he was in North Korea, and he said this while he was in Vietnam. Antiwar.com reports that he accused NATO of threatening security in Asia for Russia and other nations, making a deeply interconnected argument that any NATO action globally is a potential threat to Russian security anywhere. So this, guys, is a huge departure And now NATO is not ignoring Putin's message.
Putin must not win. That would show that aggression works and force is rewarded. It would be dangerous for our own security and for the whole world. So we must sustain and step up our support for Ukraine.
So now NATO is responding to Putin's response, to their response. You see how this goes, this escalation? So when Putin uses the word existential, an existential threat, he means a threat to the very existence of something. In this case, a threat to the existence of Russia. The threat to Russia's existence is NATO, walking right up to their doorstep.